On Billboard, December 1994, REM, What's the Frequency? Kenneth, you know when we mention Billboard on BayRadio International that we will be joined by our US correspondent, and the Rich is back. How's it going?
Merry Christmas. It's a Merry Christmas for everybody.
How was the US of A for Thanksgiving?
Very expensive. I had sticker shock from just eating out and living in a hotel for about 10 or 11 days. We went to celebrate my daughter's birthday, and we were back in New Orleans, which is a place where my wife and I lived for a long time, and just had a wonderful time. It was great to be back, but it's great to be back here.
Glad to. You were worried about the prices. That's what we mean by sticker shock, right?
Was it expensive? Yeah.
How much is a Babe Ruth these days? I mean,
I'm telling you, I almost got into a fist fight with a guy at a bodega because he charged me twice as much for a candy bar as he should have, and I was not having it. So there.
You mentioned Babe Ruth because we don't have them here. So.
Oh, yeah, well, they're delicious.
Anyway, and the other thing, of course, we were just while we're on the candy thing, about Hershey's being taken over by the company that owns Cadbury. Could be the biggest chocolatier in the world.
That is big news because Hershey's sells themselves as the great American chocolate bar, and Hershey's are good.
Yeah.
What chocolate is not good? That's what I want to know.
There you go.
They're all good.
You said you were going to be cutting back.
You do have to cut back. I gained so much weight. I have no idea how much, but all I know is the buttons on my shirt are screaming a little bit every time I put them on.
Please tell us you weren't stuck in a hotel for Thanksgiving like we see in all the movies.
I was not, but
a hotel or an airport generally in the films.
No, we did miss dinner that night because our flight was delayed, so we ended it. We had kebabs at a kebab place for Thanksgiving, so it was okay.
Hope it was turkey.
It was okay. It was all right.
It was something, right?
It was
okay. Kebab.
Yeah.
Right, so plenty has been going on over the past couple of weeks.
Really?
Yeah.
But what have I missed?
I threw out about 10 stories this morning when I was getting stuff together. So much. And of course, at least not in the last few days, where Syria is being hit by US and Israeli airstrikes. The war bloggers are worrying about the threat to the two Russian bases there. There's an air base, and then there's a base on the Mediterranean, which actually has been hit, from what I can tell today. I was getting stuff from the other bloggers around Europe about what's been happening at the Russian bases.
But I think we were both talking before we went on air about how surprised we were that this happened.
Well, it was just the quickness of it as well, overnight.
No inkling that this was going to happen. And then Americans were really happy about Assad, who is, in my opinion, a lot of people's opinions, he's a thug and a murderer and that sort of thing. So people are glad he's gone, and nobody's surprised that he ended up in Moscow.
No. Well, we weren't sure where he was for a while. It switched the transponder off on the plane. He just disappeared into the ether. And then it suddenly cropped up. Oh, yes, his mate Vlad allowed him to have asylum.
But look at the guy that replaced him. He's from Al-Qaeda. So when everybody was getting all excited going, well, that's great. Assad's not anymore. Yay. Oh,
well, he says he's changed, but we'll see.
He's changed?
Different countries are treating that in slightly different ways. It was weird because Trump had just said at the reopening of the cathedral in Paris, he basically just said to people, wow, the world's crazy right now. And that was before this.
And you inherited it, and it's going to get even crazier with him in there.
Yeah.
There's no question.
So what do you foresee here? Well, Israel keeps saying, we're not going for Damascus, but the latest pictures show that their tanks about 20 miles away from Damascus. Obviously, I guess the big powers that are involved there, the US and the Israelis, they don't want a vacuum where something could break out that they perhaps don't want. And of course, there are a lot of Al-Qaeda people in the country, least of all those who are in the prisons as well.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that they opened up the prisons and they let everybody off their debts, and saying that everything that women were required to do, that's suddenly off the table, and everybody had complete freedom. And it's one of these things that sounds great now. We'll see how it sounds in about a month or two when they take over. I mean, this is like the dog running after the car. They finally caught the car. Let's see what they do with the car. So I don't really know exactly what's going to happen, but I'm a little surprised at all the violence. I'm really surprised now that the rebels have taken over the country, or at least Damascus. I'm really surprised that there's that much fighting going on. I thought it had pretty much settled down to that. Not that it was bloodless, but that it was going to be taken care of pretty quickly. But as with everything that happens in Syria, in Israel, it's complicated.
Yeah, it's been a proxy war for a while for some. And, of course, Turkish borders and Israeli borders, they're the ones that really need to make sure that they're in control of their own space before anything else happens in the country. Of course, those Russian warships fled the Tartus, what's it called, harbour straight away, and they're out in the Med.
I don't know what, and the U.S. apparently doesn't know what to do about this. They seem very, very confused. They just know that they want to make sure there are no nuclear weapons, that there are no chemical weapons and that sort of thing.
They did actually, I think they bombed the chemical weapons.
Yeah, they did.
We're just saying who's running this, because, Joe Biden, kind of, as we'll talk about a little bit later, has taken a little bit of a backseat, it seems, since Trump's re-election. The administration continues whilst there's still money to run it, right? Yeah.
And they're still giving money, for instance, to Israelis, and they've allocated more money before the inauguration to go to
huge package for Ukraine.
Another $1 billion for Ukraine. So we're going to talk about that too. But it seems to me that the U.S. right now doesn't know what to do. I know they want to back the anti-Assad revolutionaries, but to what extent, I don't know. They don't want to put any boots on the ground. I don't think anybody wants to get in the middle of this thing.
There's about 9,000 American troops in Syria anyway.
Yeah, that's right. They do have boots on the ground, but
they do. They're not engaged in combat as such, unless apart from defence. But
that's right.
I did see calls actually on US breakfast TV, early breakfast TV, to say that there are calls to pull them out and not have them involved. So that may well happen quite quickly. Okay. You don't know. All right. Also, we've been hearing quite a lot about TikTok in the States recently. There's a ban pretty much going to happen, it looks like, but they're asking for a pause on that ban, TikTok.
Well, TikTok has asked that, first of all, in a court, in a high court in the U.S., there is they've been told to close TikTok down by the 25th of January of next year. I think the 25th or the 19th. I'm not quite sure which day they're looking at doing. 19th, I'm sorry.
Early January,
19th of January, they'll be closing TikTok down unless they were sold to a non-communist, a non-Chinese company.
There's huge concerns about mobiles in the States. We don't call them mobiles, we call them cells. But having Chinese intelligence in them. Yeah,
and that's I think this is just my opinion. I think it's a very valid concern, and the fact that it has widespread support by the Senate. And also Joe Biden about closing TikTok down because of these fears. However, and Trump, on the other hand, is saying he likes TikTok. He sees the value, and he's not bothered by the whole Chinese support thing. So he wants to keep TikTok going. So
this is another thing that the administration are trying to do before the inauguration.
One day before the inauguration. Mm-hmm. So that's what the significance of the 19th is. But it's my opinion that TikTok is such a valuable thing. I don't know how much it would fetch. You're not going to close down the influence it has on the world. You got 170 million Americans per month that are on TikTok, and God knows how many people are around the world. And the fact is that it's got so much value, somebody should be able to buy the company. If I'm Elon Musk, God help us.
First word that came to my lips.
I apologize for that. Musk or Zuckerberg or any one of a number of people. If I'm out there, it's such a cash cow. I would look at it and say, you don't have to create any content. The content is all there. Mm-hmm. All you have to do is own it, insert some ads, and away you go, and just vacuum the money up. But when you look at it, I don't know why anybody wouldn't want to buy that company. I would think somebody may step in at the last minute and rescue it and say, okay, I'm going to buy the company, but at a fire sale price.
Yeah, but I don't know why they're going for this now anyway, because Trump already said he's just going to overturn it anyway, so...
Yeah, that's true. But what they're hoping, it'll go to the Supreme Court, which is very conservative, conservative, and supported by Trump. And what happens if it does go to the Supreme Court? I don't know which way this is going to go, but they may just say no. TikTok can continue as is. If that's the case, the minute a Democrat gets into office in a couple of years, let's say, the whole thing's going to happen all over again. But I believe that it's valid, and all you need to do is sit in your living room and talk about something with your partner. And then all of a sudden you're getting ad for shoes or dry cleaning or cars or whatever.
It's kind of worrying.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife and I were sitting in the living room just talking about what each of us wants for Christmas. We both looked at our phones, and there were those things.
Wow.
But this happens to everybody. It's not, certainly not just us. And we look at it and go, if you don't think your phone's not paying attention to you, you are way out of league.
How many times I have to shout, "Hey, Google," at mine? Now, is he Luigi Mangione or is he Mark Rosario? This is the man that's been charged with the murder of the healthcare CEO after a lengthy manhunt following him from New York. You've been following this one quite closely.
Yeah, he's quite a good-looking guy, unfortunately, and a murderer. So he's the whole package. Everybody, there are all these memes about him because he's really good-looking and cut and all that stuff. But that's absolutely a cartoon name. Isn't that a name you'd see in a Scorsese movie?
Which one?
Luigi Mangione.
Yeah.
Well, the other one too. What's his name?
Mark Rosario.
Okay,
but that was on the license, so we think that his real name is Luigi Mangione. Do we know anything about the motive here?
No, I don't know. But this guy is a conspiracy theorist, and he hates anybody in power. And apparently something has happened with him in healthcare to make him.
I think one of his roommates was saying that he'd had a bad back, but I'm not quite sure how much that has.
Well, you don't go out and kill the president of the company.
No.
He might be cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. He's a little out there. But
however, there's got to be.
But he's a young guy. He's only 26.
And he's quite a well-to-do family as well that he's from, apparently. But there's quite a lot to be said, is there not, though, for people's frustration, let's say, over healthcare in the US of A.
Well, yeah, everybody's frustrated by healthcare and what it costs. And, if you have a procedure here in Spain, it might cost you $0 or €0. And you go back to the U.S. and you could pay up to $500,000 for something. And I was talking to a friend of mine over dinner the other night back there, and he and I had the same procedure, and they're still paying it off after a number of years just for things like anesthesia and staying in the room and blah, blah, blah.
Which you would expect in some cases your healthcare to cover, wouldn't you?
You would think. But
it turns out that it doesn't always.
As a matter of fact, there's, and I don't think, I'm not going to hang UnitedHealthcare out to dry on this, but one healthcare company said that starting next year, they were going to only cover 6 hours of anesthesia in an operation.
So what happens if you run out? They wake you up?
That's a good question. So in other words, they cover up to 6 hours, and anything after 6 hours, you're on your own. And it turns out they moonwalk that back, and so they're not going to do that because that's absolutely ridiculous. Anybody would probably agree with that. But
so there are some things we know. He had a gun and a silencer, similar to what they thought was used in that shooting on December the 4th.
Yeah.
Possibly it was a 3D printed one. He had the fake driver's license with the other name on it, and a handwritten 3-page letter, or some networks are calling it a manifesto, condemning healthcare for the healthcare industry as a whole for putting profits over patients. And this is a quote: "These parasites had it coming."
Well, I think this guy is pretty much toast, because what happens is
I do apologise for any strife and trauma, but it had to be done, he wrote.
Well, shooting a man in the back as he walked down the street, and the guy's got a wife and family, I'd say, yeah, you caused quite a bit of strife. But my one thing that I'd like to call attention to is how quickly, in a city, in a country of 330 million people, they found this guy 300 miles from New York. He could have gone anywhere.
I mean, he was masked, well, he wore a medical mask in some photos, he was covered up in others, but there was one full shot of his face, and there was a shot of his eyes, and then he was recognised in a McDonald's, right?
Yeah, and I know the UK has, especially London, has a
camera on every corner.
and other people go, oh, it's so terrible, and I feel like I'm always being watched, but I'm one of those guys that says, if you got nothing to hide, it's not a problem. As long as you don't put them in toilets, and as long as you don't put them in people's homes, that's fine. But in the U.S., because shoplifting is such a big thing, because crime rears its ugly head. I think this is and if you didn't have the cameras, you wouldn't have caught this guy. God bless this guy in McDonald's. I think it was actually, as I was seeing this morning on US TV, was one of the customers who thought that they recognised the person, and an elderly employee at McDonald's had called the police. So they think they've got their man. They're pretty sure they do, because they also have his DNA too. So we'll find out in the next day or so. But boy, I'll tell you, it was less than a week, and they found this guy, and he could have been on a plane. He could have been anywhere. And I don't think he was very smart, because wouldn't you leave the country? Wouldn't you?
Well, you called him cuckoo already.
But wouldn't you? But initially they said they saw the gun, and I saw reports that said, was this a hitman? Was this guy a professional?
And was he going to go after somebody else? It's possible,
Yeah,
because he kept the gun. He could have thrown it in the lake in Central Park, but obviously didn't. They were looking for something, weren't they?
The divers went down in the lake in Central Park. What a great job that would be, diving in Central Park in December.
Wow.
Great.
A bit chilly.
Oh, thanks, boss.
Never too far away from another big health worry in the States, and nationwide milk testings are about to undergo because of the spread of bird flu in cows. Mm-hmm. It's not cow flu. It's bird flu in cows.
That's better. That's the better kind.
700 herds infected in 15 states.
Yeah.
That's quite extensive. That's worrying, isn't it?
Yeah, and 58 people have been infected with the flu, but luckily none of them severely. And I guess they get flu symptoms, or they get a little bit ill, but they don't. Nobody has died from this.
Mildly ill, yeah.
And it's also a problem in the UK. Mm-hmm. In Yorkshire, right?
So this is H5N1 as opposed to H1N1, which is the bird flu strain that we heard so much about in previous scares.
Well, the only people that need to be afraid of this thing is if you're drinking raw milk. And there are a lot of people who like to drink raw milk. And this is one of those cases where I would say, at least for now, I wouldn't be drinking any raw milk. I drink pasteurized milk. And I happen to love drinking. I love a cold glass of milk. I think there's nothing like it. But in this particular case, just stick to the pasteurized milk and you'll be fine. I'm sure they'll be solving this pretty soon, and they've already developed a vaccine for this. So.
Coming towards the end of the Democratic rule or presidency, and U.S. jobs have bounced back after the hurricanes and strikes. This is what the Democrats are trying to say ahead of the election. It's all right. Everything's good. We're fine. There's money. But, of course, people didn't feel that in their pockets, especially the blue-collar workers who most notably did not vote Democrat this time around.
Yeah, there are all kinds of problems about that. But 227,000 jobs a day, that's not chicken
feed?
Chicken feed, yeah. That's a significant number.
Not cow feed either.
No. But I have to tell you, there's mainly in the areas of healthcare, restaurants, and bars. That's where the uptick was. And I think you pointed out that with the hurricane coming and knocking out several states and a lot of really crucial cities that were devastated, like Asheville, which is a tourist destination, they're slowly coming back. But my hat is off to the U.S. economy. I mean, everything is more expensive over there, but the economy seems to have bounced back.
If they could have just felt it about 6 months earlier, perhaps, for the Democrats.
It's just unfortunate. It's unfortunate that the pandemic hit, that prices went up. That everybody remembers where you couldn't get stuff because of the blockades and the ports, the supply chain slowdown. That seemed to kill everything and drive up prices. And boy, look, it took 2 years to kind of rebound from that. But right now, things are definitely on the upswing as far as the economy.
Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, though, isn't thinking about cutting rates very quickly. So that's going to slow things down a bit, surely.
Well, he rose them slowly. He rose them a quarter of a point at a time, and now he's backing off. But from everything I've read, he may not, because they meet quarterly, he may not drop the rates anymore the next time. Usually over the past year, every quarter, he's dropped it another quarter point. But I think when they think everything is going right, they don't. He's not going to drop it. But,
while on the subject of money issues.
It would be great if he did.
Yeah. While we're on the subject of money issues, during the Obama administration, we saw a shutdown of things like parks and museums and so on because there was no government funding. And we're about 9 days away from that possibility again.
Well, it's the phrase is kicking the can, and what they do, that what the Senate does is kick the can, meaning they, instead of adopting a budget that's going to span a year or 2 years, what they do is they say, well, we're going to fund the government for 3 months. We're going to fund it for 30 days. This is exhausting. If you're a legislator and you've got to be constantly looking at ways that you can get what you want in order to fund the government, because you're right. When Obama was president, he had a Republican legislature.
Called him out, didn't he?
Yeah. And they said, well, we're going to close the government down. No, you're not. Well, they did. And they closed it for about, I want to say about 3 weeks.
So if the Democrats want to kick the Republicans now, because House Speaker Mike Johnson needs the Democrats to help them, it's thin margins, isn't it? So they could.
Well, all the Democrats want right now, they have they're not holding a hand of anything. They're sitting at the table holding deuces. They got nothing right now. They have no leverage with the Republicans right now. And so what they're doing is saying the one thing we want, because the Speaker of the House and the Republicans need Democratic votes. You can't do this just with what they have. Yeah. You need the Democrats to come to the table on this. It's truly bipartisan, and it should be. It's a budget. Yeah. So what happens is all they're asking is more money for disaster relief. And as the climate change affects things more and more, you get more hurricanes, you get more floods, you got winter coming, and I'm telling you, there are a lot.
Well, we've got fires and storms at the same time in the States.
Exactly.
California is, actually, that's been moving quite quickly today, that story.
Yeah.
And the fire.
Another thing that happens quite a bit, too, is people don't think about outside of these areas, is that in the spring, when the snow melts, these cities, especially along the Missouri and Mississippi rivers, they flood.
So they're going to hold out for more money for disaster relief.
They want like another $100 million.
And then they'll help the bill pass.
Yeah. And that thing will pass, and this will take us to around late March, early April. Okay. And that's about it.
By which time maybe just one guy has to say increase it, and that'll be it.
That's pretty much it.
And we were mentioning the Democrats. Joe Biden seems to be shrinking from view ahead of the return of Donald Trump. Jill went to the big gig in the that was in Paris last week, and actually, Mr. Trump, President-elect, was the one that all the focus was on, despite the fact that she was there to represent the states.
I thought it was kind of weird to look at the whole thing. I looked at the footage, and I was out of town when I saw this, and I said, well, there's Jill Biden. That looks great. There's Macron and everything else. What's this clown doing sitting there representing the country? I thought it was kind of weird, and I thought it was inappropriate.
You can't call him this clown. He's the next president of the United States of America.
Oh, President Clown. I'm sorry. But I thought that it's not like Joe Biden has so much to do. He doesn't. But I think he missed an opportunity by not going to Paris. He absolutely should have represented the country. I nothing against the First Lady, but there's a certain gravitas for him to appear. And the fact that Trump was there was pretty indicative of how things are going.
You're just back from the States, and there's a feeling that nobody's in charge, right?
Yeah, there is kind of a feeling about that. And I know the people higher up in the Democratic Party are really frustrated that Joe is not taking control of anything. And if you watch any American TV...
I mean, Kamala's just disappeared.
She's completely...
There was a picture of her this morning, but that's the first thing I've seen, apart from that one interview she did since she didn't win
the reason
race.
Seemed to be that Joe feels that nothing he says, and this is according to people close to him, Joe feels that nothing he says is of any consequence now, and everything he does should be made toward making the Trump transition
which they've talked about
smoothly, but also that he's really ticked off that he was pushed out. It's really bothering him, and so he's basically abdicating, going, well, I'm not going to do anything. He's only spoken, what I read was 7 words in the past 2 weeks.
That was to pardon his son.
And that was to pardon his son. That didn't help either.
Yeah,
there are a lot of people who are upset about that. I'm not one of them, but you can pardon who you want.
All right, let's look forward then. Quite a lot of drama about Donald Trump's picks for his cabinet. Pete Hegseth, Kash Patel, Tulsi Gabbard, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. are leading those stories, but there are a number of others that people are a bit concerned about.
Well, the thing is that you have a lot of people in the cabinet. You have, I believe it's 15 or 16 people, and they keep adding seats in the cabinet. But what happens is these people all have to go through approval by Congress. And the thing that happens is anytime a new president comes in, the Congress kind of, it may go, they may get in by one vote and they may get in by acclamation, but they eventually get in. I mean, the Congress very seldom stands in front of the new president and go, no, you're not getting your pick. You're not going to do that because that would.
That's why it might happen here.
Yeah, it might happen here just with these four. There was the talk about DeSantis getting in a position. But in fact, DeSantis, as much as I dislike him and a lot of people dislike him, he has a military background. He may be a good choice. You wouldn't want to put anybody in Secretary of Defense you wouldn't want to put me in there, for instance. You want somebody that's got some gravitas.
More of a background. Perhaps the man that's been nominated.
Yeah, but Hesketh, is continuing to dodge this whole thing about his behavior and his views on women in combat. Now he says, "Oh, there are a lot of great women out there, and women are great soldiers." But he's on record as saying women should not be in the military. There's also his drinking, his womanizing, and that sort of thing. My feeling is that he's not going to pass. I don't think he's going to pass through. I think people are softening about him, but ultimately the heat is going to be turned up to where I don't think he's going through, and you're going to see somebody else as Secretary of Defense. I could be wrong, but that's just my feeling. Kash Patel, this guy is really dangerous. They want him as head of the FBI, and he's a conspiracy theorist, and he believes that there's a deep state and everything is politicized. So I don't know what's going to happen with him. His only claim to fame is that he is a Trump loyalist to the nth degree.
Well, I guess that's the loyalist that he's looking for, surely.
Yeah, that's what he wants, but they still have to pass muster. Tulsi Gabbard was a real sympathizer.
We've spoken about her before.
Yeah, she was a real Assad sympathizer. We'll see what happens now, but certainly with Assad being tossed out, she may be...
Been back in the news, of course, with those recent developments. So.
Yeah, and RFK Jr., we all know about him and his theory. So these four are going to be problematic. The rest, the other 10 or 12, they're gonna kind of walk in. Democrats have nothing. They have no reason they can't stand up, and they're not. And if you don't put anybody in there, nobody's running the department. So you got to have somebody running the department.
Okay, what about this thin majority then in the House? How is that going to affect things? He's not going to be able to get everything all his own way, Donald Trump, or is he?
No, he's not going to get everything he wants. The Republicans have a very slim majority right now with
the weakest in the last century, people keep saying, yeah.
Correct, and what happens is he plucked three Republican members of Congress out of Congress to put them into cabinet positions. That means that there are three fewer Republicans in the Senate, meaning they have a very slim majority. The majority is, I believe it's with these other 2 or 3 going out, I believe their majority is 2. And so they can only lose 2 votes. This is under the argument that every Republican is going to vote one way, every Democrat is going to vote the other way, which isn't always the case.
Doesn't happen that way.
It doesn't happen. But there are two senators, a woman from Maine and a senator from Alaska, who are outliers, and they frequently vote with the Democrats. Mm-hmm. And if that happens, Republicans are kind of screwed.
Well, all you want in democracy is that sort of possibility where things can go either way. Otherwise, it's just one way totally.
Yeah. So it's going to be it's going to be kind of touch and go for the next 4 years.
On the other headlines concerning the next president, or the president-elect, I suppose we should call him really, is that he will pardon the U.S. Capitol rioters and end birthright citizenship. What is birthright citizenship?
Birthright citizenship is guaranteed by the 14th Amendment, which says that anybody born in the United States is an American. You don't have to petition. You don't have to do anything. If you are from the UK and you're visiting Chicago and you give birth to that child is an American citizen.
So therefore could be president, right? You have to be born in the States to be president.
Yes.
Yeah. You
have to be born in the States to be president. You can't be naturalized.
I remember when they tried to bring all that up about Obama as well. So.
Not only that, but when Schwarzenegger was governor of California, they were talking about he could be president, and he knew he couldn't.
Because he was born in Austria.
He's born in Austria, so that wasn't going to be the case. But what Trump wants to do is he wants to make it so right now, if you come over to the country illegally,
it's about sending people back, isn't it?
Exactly.
Really?
Your parents are in illegally, but they have their child born in the States, so the child is an American, and he wants to get rid of it. That's what this is aimed at. It's making sure that children who are born here they become a resident of Mexico or Nicaragua or Venezuela, wherever they come from, but not American. I don't think he's going to pass this. It's got to be a constitutional amendment.
What about pardoning the January the 6th rioters? That'll go through, right?
Oh, my God. I can't think of anything more controversial.
But will it go through?
I think he's going to be able to pardon a lot of them. I don't think he's going to pardon all of them. There's some,
because he doesn't have to really get anybody to do that. He can do it himself, can't he?
He can.
Yeah.
He can literally go there, and he could literally go into a prison and say, "I'm letting everybody out," and there's nothing anybody could do about it. But there would be a major uproar about this, especially among Democrats, because a lot of these people were trespassing. A lot of these people were breaking windows and killed a few people. So, to free somebody or to pardon somebody that has done some grievous harm to the building or to somebody else would be a major problem.
I'm sure we'll be talking about it more in the next couple of weeks. Now, finally, I knew this story would be right on your message here, because you're such a lovey. Dorothy's ruby slippers sold for $28 million at auction. We're talking about Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz here.
And how did you come up with the money to buy them? That's what I wanted. That was the question.
Merry Christmas, Rich.
I'm looking at that, and you're wearing them now. A size 4. And they were stolen. I
remember, yeah.
There were 4 pair, and somebody stole one of them, thinking that those were real crystals, real diamonds, or rubies. I'm sorry, rubies. Ruby slippers. And it turns out they were just pieces of glass, and the guy stole them, and they found them, and about...
But it doesn't come much bigger than this, does it? Hollywood memorabilia.
Big stuff.
Yeah.
Big stuff.
Anyway,
but anyhow, I just...
Probably double that in about 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
28 million?
At least.
Snip.
At least. So.
Okay. Hey, look forward to talking to you next week.